So the car market is going to collapse. It's just a matter of when. And there are several factors contributing to why this is going to happen. Obviously, tariffs are the word on everyone's mind right now, and it's got the industry in a panic. It's got the financial systems in a panic. But there are several other reasons that are going to contribute to this, which is why the whole tariffs thing is such a problem. So if you're wondering why people are freaking out, especially in the auto industry, about how the tariffs could potentially impact the industry, it's not just because of the tariffs, it's because of what's been leading up to them, okay? So take, for example, the interest rates. The interest rates have been high, and that leads to a lot of inventory right now. There is a lot of inventory sitting on dealer lots because the interest rates are high and consumer interest is comparatively low. So if you look at high interest rates, low consumer interest, and lingering inflation, that's why sitting on dealer lots, there's this kind of like oversupply of new cars. Now, Toyota and Lexus have kind of the lowest amount of supply. They keep a tight rein on their supply. So in the industry, Toyota and Lexus have sort of the lowest dealership lot supply that's just sitting around. Whereas like Stellantis and Ford have way too many cars. Now you might be thinking, well, that might be a good thing, right? With tariffs coming up, but it's not that simple. Like I said, there's a couple contributing factors before any talk of tariffs happen. That is why this situation, the car market itself, is in such dire straits and at risk of collapse. One of the big ones is that consumer debt is at its all-time high regarding the automobile industry, but repossessions of people defaulting on their automotive loans are at a historic high. Like they are out of control. And what that's leading to is it's leading to a oversaturated used car market of cars that are probably not in the greatest condition. So you have repossessions skyrocketing right now because of a massive amount of consumer debt on automobiles. And then where do those cars go? What happens to them? Well, they go into the used car market, which is going to be flooded with sort of low quality used vehicles. Again, why is this so bad? Well, when you combine that with sort of artificial price hikes due to tariffs and stuff like that, there is a sort of witch's brew, that's sort of a weird way of putting it, but kind of like a horrible stew of factors that could lead to a wholesale collapse of the entire industry. Think about what that's doing to people's personal finances. For example, defaulting on a car loan is obviously terrible for your credit. People are over-leveraged on the car loans that they have because car prices have been artificially raised due to inflation. It was not that many years ago that the average price of a new car was around $30,000, maybe up to $35,000, maybe a decade ago. Now it's at $50,000. That's a massive increase in car values that doesn't really keep pace with sort of rational year-over-year inflation. There was a massive surge in car prices due to the COVID pandemic, the chip shortage that happened after that, and those prices never really came back down, forcing consumers to take out bigger and bigger loans on more mainstream vehicles. So one of the comments that we hear a lot on our channel is, why is the price of SUVs and trucks so high? Like it's insane how high full-size trucks and SUVs are. Well, there's two factors. One was the artificial inflation driven by COVID, and the other reason is because we keep paying them. So rather than taking a step back and making, let's say, smarter, more rational consumer decisions, we, and I mean we as consumers, decided to take out ever-increasing loan lengths of time, durations, to finance cars that were like overly expensive. So whereas like 60 months used to be kind of like on the higher end of loans before, 72 months, 84 months, or even longer at worse interest rates became the norm. And that allowed automakers to keep the high prices, if not raise them even more. So if the values are sort of artificially high and they're being paid for over a long period of time, and that vehicle, whatever it is, on the used market doesn't really kind of command that sort of price, well, this leads to people being catastrophically upside down on loans, and that is a terrible position to be in. And upside down essentially means you owe more than the vehicle is worth. So with used car prices being artificially high, loan length and durations extending out, interest rates being high, it's been a terrible time to buy cars. And the advantages that dealerships especially try to take of customers, taking advantage of customers after the pandemic, has come back to bite them with sort of an oversupply of inventory just sitting on dealer lots. Now, tariffs enter the equation. And with the mention of tariffs and the prospect of car prices going up even more and interest rates still being high and inflation still lingering, this means that consumer demand is falling and falling and falling. And sales of new cars are stagnating across the industry. Not to mention, on top of all that, there's the uncertainty surrounding the tariffs. The on again and off again nature of them has people sort of spooked. It has the industry spooked, it has automakers spooked, and it kind of has the worldwide economy spooked. So what is this going to do to consumers? What is this going to do to brands? And if you are possibly in the market for a car, and I've said on this channel many times, we were like, Megan needs a car. Like we're driving Hallie's CRV, the one we got for her as a new driver, but like she literally doesn't have a car right now. This is my Camry I got for commuting. We're going to do a quick kind of like used car review on that upcoming, but we don't have a dedicated car for her. When Hallie starts driving as a 16-year-old, we're going to have to get something. If you're in the same boat we're in and you have to get something either want or need, probably need at this point, I would hold off if it's a want, what are you gonna do? What options are available to you? Well, honestly, if you have a newish car right now and you're not looking, you need to maintain that vehicle. Now is not the time to buy a car. What's gonna happen on dealer lots is prices are gonna sort of be normal-ish for a while because the money it costs them to keep the current cars on the lot, it is before all the tariffs and uncertainty, but that is going to change either because they need to raise prices to stay in business or because the next wave of cars on the lot are going to be hit with markups and increases that will eventually get passed on to the consumer. So if you have a decent vehicle right now, maintain it as best you can, keep up with the maintenance, don't slack off on your maintenance, even if that goes up. You're in an okay position. What if you have an older car? What if you're sitting on a car that is maybe a little less than reliable? Well, if it is cheaper to maintain it, and it almost always is, you need to take it into a trusted shop, address the major issues, have them inspect it for any other major issues that might arise, and then come up with a plan to maintain that car long term. Any semblance of creature comforts or any thought of kind of luxury features, you need to just throw that out of your mind. If there's a creature comfort that isn't working properly right now is not really the time to worry about it. You need to be focused on the mechanical reliability of the vehicle. So you have an older, semi-reliable car, you need to take it to a trusted shop and find out how long that car can last you if you keep up with the major issues, because those major issues might impact you in the wallet short term, but it's going to keep you out of a long-term payment structure that is not going to be in your best interest. Honestly, that's kind of what I did with this car. This is a 2020 Toyota Camry Hybrid. We picked this up back in October, and I've been driving it for the past 6-7 months. We're going to do a little like used car review on this. In fact, I'm going to talk about why this is maybe the best car for the moment right now. But this is exactly the kind of vehicle, if you need something reliable or you have something reliable like this, no question you need to be maintaining this vehicle for the long term. This is exactly what you want. And honestly, when it comes to gas mileage, when it comes to efficiency and stuff like that, like I said, I'll talk about more in the future. This might be the perfect car for sort of uncertain times. Trust me on that. And I'll tell you why later. All right, what if you need a car now, or you will need a car? Like your car is on its way out. You're in our situation where you got a kid who's about to start driving and you or your spouse needs a car in like the short-term near future. We're talking less than a year for us. What can you do? Well, I would strongly suggest you consider buying a very cheap and reliable used car, no frills, no options, at the best interest rates you can find at the lowest possible price. And if you need it within the next year, consider something in the short term. Consider buying something in the short term while there is still an oversupply and the prices haven't necessarily been adjusted yet. That is coming. It will be coming in the near future. So if you are in a place right now where you can do that, you can get rid of an unreliable rattle trap falling apart vehicle, or you just need one straight up like we do, now is the time to start looking, and don't get something luxurious. Don't look at options. Get something that's going to be just basic transportation that is reliable, preferably from a brand that has decent resale value like Toyota, so that later on, if the economy stabilizes, the threat of tariffs goes away, you can trade in that car and still get some residual value out of it, and you don't find yourself in some terrible upside down situation because you bought something ridiculous only to find that the value plummeted. If you're buying something now, buying a high mileage, reliable single used car is going to be your best bet. But you want to act now. For example, this Camry I got for dirt cheap, and it has about 80,000 miles on it. I think it had like 70 something when I bought it, maybe like 71, 72,000 miles when I bought it. Something that has high mileage and is reliable is going to be your best bet, but be careful, because much beyond this, those cars are going to skyrocket in value as the inventory shrinks and the good cars shrink and the values of them necessarily go up due to tariffs and sort of law of supply and demand. You do not want to be stuck with a high mileage, unreliable car that you're paying a big loan on, all right? That's a guaranteed recipe to be upside down, and now you've compromised your financial position for that, okay? And remember, little disclaimer, this is not financial advice. I'm just giving you an interesting video or whatever the legalese is. But you don't want to find yourself in that position, okay? That's a terrible position to be in. Will there be anything to buy on dealer lots in 2025 and 2026? Yes, but in the short term and the long term, there is a potential lose-lose for the consumer. The short-term lose-lose is that dealers might try to raise prices in the next month or two to offset the money they're going to lose on the cars they have to buy if the tariffs stay in effect or go up. So for example, the cars currently sitting on the dealer lots that were not hit with any tariff markups or anything like that from the automakers, those dealerships might go, you know what, we're about to get hosed. We're not selling many cars. Consumer interest is low. So we're going to have to raise those prices now to offset the higher costs we're going to incur later. And then later, for all you consumers that wait, they're just going to be more expensive. They're just going to be more expensive, and that's going to get passed on to you. So it could be a lose-lose. You really want to look at that now. Compare prices all over your region. So if we live in Atlanta, okay, so like if you live in Atlanta and you look at like Charlotte and Birmingham and North Florida, like Jacksonville, you look at everywhere in your region and see, are some dealerships holding steady on price or are some beginning to increase? Find those deals where you can, because the time to do so is going to run out relatively quickly. In simplest terms, buy only what you need in the short term, okay? Now's not the time for frills. Now's not the time for luxury features. Also, with some uncertainty around gas prices, not nearly as talked about because, you know, tariffs are occupying the news cycle, but gas prices could fluctuate too due to worldwide economic highs and lows, right? Ups and downs in the world economy are going to affect gas prices. So if you could find a decent deal on a used hybrid, something like this Camry hybrid, you might want to consider snatching that up. If you could find a deal, you really might want to consider it now, because those cars are going to skyrocket in value if gas prices go up, okay? They're holding steady right now, but this is kind of a big what if. I chose to go with the hybrid because I have a long commute and it made sense. But hindsight, that ended up being a really good move for me because I got a great deal on this car and it saves a ton of money on gas. So if you could find a current Toyota hybrid, I'm partial to Toyota and Lexus, a no frills, low like option list model like a Corolla or a Camry might be your best bet. Okay, you're saying, yeah, Jack, I hear all that, but I really want to buy something nice right now. Is there an option for me? Well, maybe. Not a great one, but maybe. So here's the thing, and I've been thinking about this as well because, you know, Megan wants a nice car. She deserves a nice car. She's been driving the old mom family Suburban for a long time, and we got rid of it. If I were to buy a nice car right now, and let me qualify this by saying that we don't make that much money using, off this channel, and I just think it wouldn't be wise right now. So I'm gonna put that into context. But let's say you really want to. Personally, I would probably lease something in the short term. I would do like a 24, 36 month lease until I was absolutely positive I knew where the bottom of the market was, okay? When supply and demand go bananas like they did after COVID, thanks to these tariffs, because we haven't even begun to felt the potential impact of them if they go off in the way that they could, if they impact the industry at the fullest extent, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what is potentially going to happen. If they wreck the auto industry and the market collapses, being locked into a short-term lease on something nice that is going to have terrible depreciation anyway, let's say you get something like a BMW X5 or something like that, and you lease it short-term, you're not going to be hit with as awful of loans and interest rates, and you're not going to be left with this like horribly depreciated asset that you sunk a bunch of money into. That is my advice. To be clear, my real advice is don't do that and buy a cheap, reliable used car, okay? Look for brands that hold value as well. Look for brands like Toyota and Lexus that tend to hold their value over time. You might spend a little bit more on the front end, but it's gonna pay off a lot more on the back end. When you wanna sell that car, you need to hold on to that car. That was another thing that went into my decision to get the Toyota Camry Hybrid, was that I knew no matter what happened, this would be a reliable car that would hold its value in the wake of any, or in the face of any market turmoil, okay, or any kind of instability. So consider that as well. You want to buy a no-frills car for cheap, but you want it to be something that's going to have a residual value. You don't want to buy something that tends to have a catastrophic decrease, like something from Stellantis or Ford or something like that. And I'm not knocking those brands. There's plenty of those cars, especially Ford cars that I generally like. I like the F-150. I like the new Expedition, looks great, but they tend to have pretty bad resale value and depreciation hits them hard. Similarly, EVs, luxury cars, things like that have known awful depreciation, you want to stay away from that right now. Don't even think about buying an EV or a luxury vehicle right now, because the depreciation on that combined with the loan, you'll be upside down, the market collapses, no one's going to want them. It's going to be bad. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath in the marketplace for vehicles like that if the full weight of the tariffs goes into effect. And as I mentioned before, if you get something reliable, carefully maintain it. Carefully maintained cars are going to be so much more value to you as a customer. They are going to hold their value. Whatever you spend on the maintenance, it is a tiny fraction of what you would spend on an auto loan over time. So even if you get hit with like $1,000 repair bill or a $2,000 repair bill, think about how much money you would spend if you were paying an auto loan over 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and that is a fraction of the overall loan. You would spend so much more. So keep that in mind. If you have a nice, reliable car, even a semi not reliable car, but it's mechanically sound, that is always going to be your best bet, and that is only going to get more true month over month of 2025. The problem with what's going to happen in the car market crash of 2025 is that everyone loses and no one wins. New car prices are going to go up. Used car prices are going to go up. Interest rates, they might go up, which means upside down car loans will increase, defaults will increase, repossessions will increase, people's credit scores will go down, and the economy, inevitably, especially the auto economy, the auto industry, will go down. Oh, and by the way, if that happens, stock prices will also go down. Crashing credit scores and record-setting repossessions are going to send shockwaves through the global economy, because this is not an America problem. We are one of the largest car markets in the world. I think we're like second to China now, but this is not an America-only problem. This is going to affect Europe. It's going to affect Australia. It's going to affect pretty much all of the Western nations. Only China could be immune because of their sort of homegrown industry and they manipulate their own markets and all that kind of stuff. But the Western countries, especially America, are going to be feeling this ripple effect for at least the next several years, just like we have from COVID. Here's the wild thing. We've been here before. This happened already. COVID did it artificially, right? And we've been dealing with that ever since. Now, this is a sort of man-made problem. It started before the tariffs were announced, but it's going to be exacerbated and made worse by the tariffs, or just the instability and uncertainty caused by the tariffs. Now, I know I sort of need to mention one thing, because there might be some of you in the audience going, well, wait a second here. They can avoid the tariffs. The tariffs could all be solved. All they have to do is shift manufacturing to the US. Well, there's a problem with that line of thinking, and it's the timeline. The timeline it would take to bring factories online. It would take years to bring factories, the size of which could produce the scale and the volume of cars like a Toyota Camry that sells in the tens of thousands of cars every single year. It would take years to bring those factories online. And keep in mind as well that bringing those factories online, if it even was possible, doesn't solve the global supply chain problem. So this Camry is built in America, but the supplies that go into it come from all over the world. And Toyota has factories in Mexico for the Tacoma, and it has factories in Japan for the Land Cruiser. And so this would disrupt the global supply chain. These are not sort of networks that can be easily reconfigured in the next several months, much less the next several years. So why would automakers commit to multi-billion-dollar plans if First of all, the tariffs are on again and off again, and they might go off again. And so no automaker is going to commit to changing their multi-billion-dollar sort of economic strategy because a tariff may or may not be in effect. And even if they did, well, a couple years from now, the Trump administration could be out of office. And even if the next administration is conservative as well, they might not continue with them. And so you have this sort of an uncertainty in the short term and the long term that negates the idea that an automaker the size of Toyota would even consider restructuring its entire sort of supply chain and manufacturing. Here's the thing. The on-again, off-again nature of the tariffs has already cast doubt on the sort of longevity of that strategy. So, for example, if Toyota was going to shift anything around, it's more economically viable to them to sort of eat the cost in the short term, wait it out, see what happens. Because if the economy tanks, just like it did the other week, right? I'm filming this on Easter. Today is actually Easter Sunday. We just had brunch with the family. I'm filming this on Easter. The tariffs that were already announced have already been paused. If that has happened in that short of amount of time, it makes more economic sense for those companies like Toyota, like Honda, or even like Ford and GM and all of them to just wait it out, to eat the cost, to see what's going to happen, than it does for them to restructure billions of dollars of economic investment and global supply chains. I mean, think about it. There's no indication that these are going to remain long-term because up until now, on Easter, April of 2025, none of them have. They've been on and off. So that uncertainty that's being passed along to the economic markets that's caused the stock market fluctuation is certainly going to be taken into account by the world's automakers. But here's something that you might not have considered. What if some of the automakers want to mitigate the problem in the short term? Well, currently, most of the different automakers that have plants in America are at a capacity that they could not easily sort of repurpose those plants to build other models. For example, BMW Spartanburg plant, Mercedes Alabama plant, Hyundai and Kia have plants in Alabama and Georgia, and they're opening a new one down in Savannah, which, by the way, was announced like way before any of this stuff happened. So don't buy that they just did that. That was just a PR stunt. That was announced years ago, all right? So Toyota, Honda, then, Ohio, Kentucky, like these places where they build cars, repurposing those plants, they're already building cars at pretty close to their maximum capacity. So they don't really have the capacity to pick up other models. You can't just take the Camry plant and start churning out RAV4s. It's not that simple. There are only two brands, to my knowledge, that currently do have unused capacity in their plants, and that's Nissan and Volkswagen. So Volkswagen's Chattanooga plant and Nissan's Tennessee plant, Smyrna, Tennessee, do have some unused capacity to build relevant models. Will that happen? Possibly. But people are talking about automakers like Porsche and stuff like that transferring over to this unused plant capacity. That is insane. That is insane. Porsches have been built in pretty much one place exclusively for their entire automaker's history in Germany. What do you think that does to the brand perception and value of Porsche to be like, yeah, let's build them in Chattanooga, Tennessee? That's not going to go over very well with Porsche-philes all over the United States, to think that Hank in Chattanooga was putting their Porsche together as opposed to Carl, the German physicist who is building it in Zuffenhausen, all right? So you got to think about that. Like, there are more complex sort of brand and marketing things in play as well. They're not just going to casually decide to start building Cayennes in Chattanooga. But there's another problem. Unused plant capacity could spell the death of popular models. And I'm going to give you a dark example that maybe I'll talk about in a future video. Let's say GM wanted to repurpose a plant. What would make sense for them? It would make sense for them to take a low volume model that has one of the most advanced plants that GM has and switch and get rid of it, cut that model, and start selling Equinoxes or something that is far more, profitable and volume driven. I'm talking about one of my favorite cars in the world, the Corvette. The Corvette is built in Bowling Green, Kentucky, in a very advanced factory, but it sells in comparatively small numbers. So if this tariff thing got bad enough, if the industry got bad enough, you could see automakers making the unfortunate decision to cut low volume, but sort of halo vehicle models in favor of profits gained from high volume selling models. And I don't know about you, but that's not really a world, an auto landscape that I want to live in. Guys, no doubt that this is a complex problem, but I wanted to make a video out of this because I've been working in the auto industry for some time now, and Megan and I really enjoy reviewing cars, and I really enjoy being a part of the industry. And if you're new to this channel, my new job, I work at a European auto shop in North Atlanta, working on their social media and marketing stuff. And so I'm in the industry now on that side as well, sort of in the service repair side. So I see some of the supply chain as it applies to that side of the business, and parts and labor and stuff like that. And then we work with a lot of dealerships. We see a lot of people who come from dealerships, bring cars in for pre-purchase inspections and all that good stuff. So I've gotten to be a part of the auto industry in a number of different ways now. And so I wanted to try to bring you some value in this. Like, I see a lot of news stories, and I'm not talking about any side of the aisle or political perspective. I'm actually just talking about in general. I see a lot of news stories from talking heads on the news that, like, they're just reporting on something, but they're not actually in the industry. They don't, like, kind of fully understand the ramifications of what they're talking about. So I talked to some of my friends in the comms departments of different companies, some of my YouTube friends that I met reviewing cars, and then some of my friends that I work with now in the sort of repair and supply and, service department industries. And the consensus is all the same. They're very worried. Tariffs have the ability to absolutely wreck the auto industry, and the auto market was already on its way. You've probably watched dozens of videos hyperbolizing the auto market is going to collapse, it's in calamity, it's going to be a disaster. I'm not saying that that's not what was going to happen. The high interest rates, bugs flying around, it's, Georgia spring here. The high interest rates and the long loans and the defaulting and the repossessions was already pointing to some pretty dire economic news. The tariffs are just going to exacerbate that. And I believe that they're being applied by people that don't understand the industry, and they're being commented on by people that don't understand the industry. So I hope you found a little bit of value in this. As I said at the beginning of this video, your used car, the car you already own, is probably going to be your best bet for the foreseeable future. So make sure you maintain that vehicle, keep it up to date, keep it in good running order, and it might be kind of batten down the hatches and wait this out. And if you are in an unenviable financial position, do whatever you can to get yourself above water as quickly as possible before you find yourself drowning in debt or potential financial calamity. All right. I hope that's not you. I hope you guys are well. I hope everybody takes care of themselves. Tune in for more sort of the commentary stuff. I feel like it's a good time to share that sort of information with the public and hopefully keep people from getting in a bad situation. All right. Give it a like if you like the video, and of course, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you in the next one. This is my disclaimer that this is not financial advice. This is a guy making YouTube videos in a parking lot.